Hello, my friends. I hope you're having a peaceful day. Today, I want to share something very special with you, a true story that might change how you think about growing older. Margaret stood in her kitchen at 3 a.m., crying over a forgotten pot of coffee. She couldn't remember turning the stove on, and for the third time that week, she wondered if this was the beginning of the end. But what happened next would change everything she thought she knew about growing older. Margaret was 67, a retired teacher from Massachusetts who had always prided herself on her sharp mind and steady hands. She'd raised 3 children, managed a classroom of 30 students for decades, and could recite poetry from memory. But lately, something felt different. Before I tell you about that life-changing morning, let me take you back to where this story really began. Just 6 months earlier, Margaret's days had been filled with purpose. Morning coffee with her neighbor Linda, afternoon walks through her tree-lined neighborhood, evening calls with her daughter in California, sharing stories and laughter. She volunteered at the local library twice a week, teaching adults how to read. Her hands were steady, her mind was clear, and she felt useful. But then, small things started slipping through the cracks. It began with misplaced keys, then forgotten appointments. Margaret would walk into a room and stand there, wondering what she'd come for. "I'm losing myself," she whispered to her reflection one morning. The woman staring back looked tired, older, uncertain. Her daughter noticed during their phone calls. "Mom, you asked me that same question 10 minutes ago." The words hung in the air like a weight neither of them wanted to acknowledge. Margaret started avoiding social gatherings. What if she forgot someone's name? What if she repeated herself? The fear became her constant companion. The kitchen incident was her breaking point. Standing there at 3 a.m., surrounded by the smell of burnt coffee, Margaret felt completely alone. Her mind raced with terrifying thoughts. Is this Alzheimer's? Will I forget my grandchildren's faces? Will I become a burden? Asterisk. She called her doctor the next morning, hands trembling as she dialed. The appointment felt like a death sentence waiting to be read. But Dr. Williams surprised her with an unexpected question. "Margaret, when's the last time you did something that brought you joy?" Margaret couldn't remember. Dr. Williams didn't prescribe medication. Instead, he handed her a small card with an address. "There's a mindful aging class at the Goddard House," he said gently. "Not because something's wrong with you, Margaret, but because something might be right that you've forgotten about." The following Tuesday, Margaret found herself in a circle with 8 other people, all around her age. The instructor, Sarah, had silver hair and kind eyes. "We're not here to fight aging," Sarah said. "We're here to dance with it." For the first time in months, Margaret felt a spark of curiosity instead of fear. Week by week, something shifted. Margaret learned to pay attention differently. During her walks, she stopped rushing and started noticing. The way afternoon light filtered through maple leaves, the sound of children playing in distant yards, the smell of fresh bread from the corner bakery. She started keeping a gratitude journal. At first, it felt forced, but gradually she found herself looking forward to writing down 3 things that had brought her joy each day. In art class, her hands found their steadiness again as she painted watercolor sunsets. In meditation, her racing mind learned to rest. And slowly, gently, Margaret began to remember who she was beyond her fears. Today, Margaret still misplaces her keys sometimes. She still forgets names occasionally, but she's learned something profound. Aging isn't about what you're losing. It's about discovering what you're gaining. "I spent so much time worrying about my mind slipping away," Margaret told me recently, "that I almost missed the wisdom that was growing in its place." She still teaches adults to read, but now she also teaches them something else, that every stage of life has its own kind of beauty, if we're mindful enough to see it. Margaret learned that growing older isn't about holding on to who you were, it's about embracing who you're becoming. And that morning in her kitchen, surrounded by the smell of burnt coffee and the taste of tears, That wasn't the end of her story. It was the beginning of her most beautiful chapter yet. Because sometimes when we stop fighting the current, we discover we were never drowning at all. We were learning to swim in deeper waters. What small moment of beauty did you notice today? Share in the comments below.